Broadcasting live from WORKBENCHcon 2022 in Atlanta, it's time for Organization Conversation, brought to you by Wall Control Storage Systems. Wall Control gives you the storage and organization you crave.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Organization Conversation. I'm here with Stephanie from Uncommon Outpost / also Wall Control, our wonderful co-host, and we're excited to have Caleb here from YouCanMakeThisToo. So, Caleb, first of all, I love your channel, and just the name of it itself is awesome. It tells a story, and it lets people. It already makes you comfortable with like what people are about to see, and I think that's a really good way to lead into something when you're not overwhelmed. Like you feel like you're being patted on the back when you start. So, yeah. Anyways, introduce yourself, and let's start there.
Well, yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me on. You can make this too. I'm glad that it does come across the way I hope, which is, and my goal with the content partly is to sort of be a pat on the back. My elevator with it, though, is to provide confidence, knowledge, and inspiration to people through engaging and entertaining content to demystify the maker process, so they realize that they can make this too. Maybe the caveat being, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, right. But if you want to, you'll get there. Let's start with simple steps and get you there. And I guess the much simpler way to say that would be I just try to pat people on the back and say you can do it. And
awesome. I think about like Stephanie, stuff I've seen you try. It's that same kind of personality that I think really engages with that. Like, I think I can do this, and then you start going after it.
Yeah, and usually I can't until much later. But it's nice, and you've shown some funny like bloopery failures before, or process like missteps in the process.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very important part of the process to show and share, because so much of the time, we want to filter ourselves down and show. There's this paradox where if you're trying to give some how-to instruction, you want to make sure you're showing people the right way and that they can get to success to encourage them. But we have to accept that failure is part of the making process along the way, and that's where the inspiration side comes in, or the confidence rather in my content is I always try to make sure I show mistakes with value and how to overcome it, and make sure there's always a failing in the video. Not that I have to put a failing in.
Yeah.
Like there's plenty. I have to pick which ones stay.
Exactly.
Because, to go back to that pat on the back and the encouragement, I know when people walk out in the shop and if they're uncomfortable, they're going to mess up and make a mistake. And I want them to know that is a part of the process to just embrace, and don't let that, be a lie you tell yourself of, well, I messed up and no one else does. I guess I'm not supposed to do this. And just be like, no, that's part of the process. It happens to everyone. It happens to Caleb every time. So then they should go out there not thinking, well, I've seen how everyone does it perfect, so I'm going to go, and if I do this, it's going to go perfect. It's like, no, you're going to go out there and you're going to mess it up just like I do every time, and you're going to overcome it and have a sense of pride and have learned something. And hopefully you don't make that mistake again. That's something I struggle with.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes a few slaps on the wrist by yourself to figure out, I need to stop doing it this way. I mean, same thing at Wall Control. There's a ton of stuff we've tried that's flopped. And you don't necessarily, because we're not making YouTube videos about a build necessarily, but you don't see all the failures that you have to have. They're not failures; they're just lessons. Like you've learned a lesson. There's just maybe your pride's hurt a little bit. That's what you might define the failure as. But yeah, so how did you get into this, Caleb? What was your first failure, what brought you to where you are now with such a great channel and such a great audience?
Oh, that's everything. I think the answer. Everything has brought me to where I am.
So I was born one day.
I know. Yeah. So my dad loved my mom, and
exactly.
Not too much later was my first failure.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I don't know. I have a very mixed kind of roundabout background that brought me here. I was in the military for 6.5 years, engineer officer for the Army. When I grew up in construction, and after college, went to Germany with military and couldn't do any of the making stuff I was used to, working around, changing houses and all that. But to scratch the itch, I realized but anyone can do furniture, and we need furniture, and that's the way to get into it. So then I self-taught myself furniture. That was how I handled my downtime in Afghanistan. I got all the fine woodworking and popular woodworking magazines I could, found blogs, found some YouTube, and that was my sanity check when I was downrange. And as soon as I got back and came back to the States. I set up my first shop in 2012 and got into doing hobbyist stuff that kind of came and went some, had some personal things happen, had to leave the military, spent a lot of time with attorneys, and decided that maybe that would be the next progression. I wanted to be a business owner, was trying to find what business. So through my divorce, it kind of demystified and destigmatized the legal field for me. And I was like, you know what? I feel like this would be an extension of what I've done as a staff officer. And I can take all these skills I've learned and move them forward. So instead of just like a start over and, well, what was the last decade of my life? It's like, oh, okay, this is a progression and continuation. I like that. I'd looked into being a furniture maker, but the economics at the time just didn't make sense for what I needed for my family and the way I wanted my career to run. So left the military, worked at a court for a year while I waited for law school to start. Went to law school about midway through. I had to start making again, because if law school teaches you anything, it's how to be very neurotic. And I was just way too in my head and needed to get my hands on things again. So I the tools I hadn't sold in the move, what I had left, I dug them back out. It's like, hey, babe, sorry, can you just park outside sometimes? Like, I need this. And she's like, you do need it. Whatever we need to do,
awesome.
I'm here to support you. So started making again. Stumbled on, I needed a miter cart station. I was like, I'm tired of putting my miters on the floor. So I was like, oh, like there's the YouTube thing. Let me just go check that. I wasn't a YouTube watcher. And I found April Wilkerson's video on that, and then Jay Bates and a few others. And then not too long later, I saw a video by Jay Bates where he explained, I'm not a woodworker and I've never made $1 woodworking. I'm a content creator. And he explained that business. And it hit me. I'm like, oh, that actually is going to fit what I want out of being a business owner way better than owning a small firm in a small town is ever going to do. And halfway through law school with 2 toddlers and, paralegal at a firm, I thought it was a great time to start a business.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Makes total sense. My wife traveled half the year for her job at the time.
Yeah, that's no better time than when you're not busy at all.
No better time. And the idea was like, you know what? I've got 18 months until I graduate, so we're going to do this. And when I graduate, this is going to work and I'm going to do it, or it's not, and I'm going to go sit at the bar and be an attorney. Well, 18 months later, spoiler alert, here I am.
Exactly, yeah.
But I won law school. I graduated with honors. So it's definitely not I didn't think I could hack it. This is what I wanted to do. So I didn't sit at the bar, and been doing this full time since May 2018 when I graduated. And
that's amazing.
Here we are. It's just been, failing forward for 5 years.
And I love how you've taken your entire life experience and layering that into getting where you're at. Like you found all these pieces and put them together, and all these expertise and not vantage points, but I guess experiences that brought you to where you're at now. It's not you didn't go this way and that way and that way. You let them all sum up to where you're at today. So
yeah, and even tiny, like as a small business owner, it's fantastic to have a law degree in my back pocket. And knowing that, I built the latter half of my law school career to making sure I did intellectual property law and corporate law and business law and tax law and contracts and everything I knew I was going to need, which has been fantastic. Then I also took that, packaged it into a startup law class for makers that I've given here at WorkBenchCon before, and Haven and Spring Make, and
that's really good. I didn't even think about that, like the value that because there's a whole legal side of it too that you don't, a lot of it's brand building and SEO and how to use TikTok and all that, but there is the legal aspect you have to pay close attention to.
Yes, very much so. And my opener to that is always, you don't decide what a business is, the government does, and you might have one and not know it, and that has consequences.
Yep.
Don't be scared of them. Just here's a little information. It's not as scary as you think it should be. So I just want to kind of, again, break the stigma and demystify that a little bit, give some people some comfort level so they know what they need to go research and when to talk to an attorney, when they need to get a CPA, which is already. And, because my big thing is don't worry too much about the liability. Almost no one's going to sue you, but you don't want to get blacklisted, and everyone has to pay their taxes, so don't mess up your taxes. That's the one that's going to get you.
Yeah.
But otherwise, don't worry about someone watching your video and suing you because what you put in the video. That's never, I say never. Probably never going to happen.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be your fear, but your fear should be making sure your taxes are good.
Exactly.
And, that you got any licenses and business entities so your city doesn't come after you. Find out you've been running a business in your house that they don't like, or that you have
even your neighborhood, like say you're in a community that can't have something like that. You want to make sure you're paying attention to the not fun stuff to do the fun stuff.
Exactly. Like Bob Claggett on his podcast a few years ago talked about when he moved from Georgia back to his hometown. So he moved states from Georgia to Kentucky, thought he had everything set up. went into the city to pay some licenses or whatever he had to 2 years after he'd been there, and then been like, oh, but you don't have this. Like, here's all your penalties and fines because you owe us all this money. Because it's like, I didn't even know. Like, where was I supposed to learn this? It's like, well, you have a business, so you're just supposed to know. It's
like, you just beam it down into your head out of the sky. Sorry,
I wasn't trying to avoid anything. I just didn't know.
Exactly.
So. Yeah. So I try to give some of those resources to people though.
Cool. So what you got any exciting builds coming up? Anything you're working on that you want to share with our customer base, our audience?
A few. So just to kind of tie it in a little bit more about me, I have a double-headed brand where I do commission furniture work and then also the content. So it's one business, two brands. You Can Make This Too doesn't really sell. Pay me a lot to do it for you. So I've got a separate brand to do all that work under. And the commissions have slowed down a little bit. It tends to be very ebb and flow and seasonal. So right now I'm finally making all the furniture I've promised my wife for years. I figure, as a custom furniture builder, our mattress should not still be on the floor.
It's the painter's house never gets the paint, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
Exactly.
I was out in the lobby there talking to some folks, and it's like I moved into a new house, and because they were telling me like, oh, I've got wall control, but I haven't put it up yet, and I'm like, I lived in my house for a year before I got it in my garage. So I can't, no judgment cast. Like I almost want like an episode on that. Just like how long it actually takes you. Yeah. So yeah.
Exactly. So I'm finally delivering that. My wife's amazing. She works from home and sews. That's her hobby. Made her some furniture for that years ago that she's outgrown and doesn't fit the space. So what I'm working on right now is getting her some better organization in her space, a new set of cabinets and bar and a new cutting table and all that, doing our bedroom suite. But then the big upcoming project that's occupied all my mind space is we're going to put in a large in-ground pool and a massive pergola and pool house that'll be partially enclosed.
Can I do that too?
You can. There will be multiple series on everything that's going to involve. Awesome. I'm going to convince you can do it, but you might not want to.
Right. And even if you don't, it's good to know how so you can pay attention to who is doing the
exactly.
I can, if that made sense.
I've outsourced very little work. Excuse me. I often get very disappointed whenever I outsource work. Mm-hmm. And then I turn that into a story just of, hey, if you do go this route, here's what you need to know. And who doesn't like pools and outdoor spaces and outdoor kitchens? So whether you're ever going to do it or anyways, I think it's going to be, a lot of really fun, engaging content about things people are interested in. Like you see a pool, ever wonder how it ends up there? Well, if nothing else, you're going to probably learn way more than you ever wanted to know about pools and pavilions, and timber framing is going to be the fun part. I've always wanted to do that, and it took me too long to realize the pavilion could be timber framed. So I did the workshop here, and that was helpful, and that's going to be a whole new process I've never done before.
Awesome. Some fun failures, I'm sure.
Yeah. My thing is I'm a beginner making content for beginners, which I think there's a lot of value of learning something from an expert, but also learning from someone who still has all the same fears you have, because they're not so old that they forget what they were concerned about when they first started.
Right.
I'm still there, so I try to make sure I capture that content whenever I do new things that I can, so I can speak to beginners as a beginner, addressing the things you're sweating about, because I am too. I don't dismiss that anymore now that I'm comfortable.
Gotcha.
Because I'm not comfortable yet.
Yeah, I understand. I believe me, I get it. And Steph, probably same for you, which is, you trying things that there's no, in uncharted territories, I guess is what I'll say.
Pretty much every time I try something, it's to see if it's possible. So I'll take something that I know I can do, but try to do it in a way that I don't know if it's possible. And a lot of times it's not. Spoiler.
Yeah.
But hey, you have to fail to. Every time you fail at something, it just gives you an idea of how you can do something else.
Yeah, you're
or how you
forward.
can make something better. So
just like I hate the question, when did you feel like you made it and you've got your hands on it? Because it's like, I never have. Like,
is that happening? Is that going to happen?
like, you please tell me when I'm going to feel that way. And it wasn't till last year, I think it finally hit me. It was like, oh, every project I'm always pushing, like every time I do something, it's something I've never done before. So I've never had that repetition of establishing comfort, because I'm always doing something I've never done. Then step back and realize, like, I've actually become quite competent at a lot of things.
Yeah.
But that's not the focus. I just take that for granted and then push forward on something new that I just make myself feel like an idiot about, because I've never done it and just mess it up.
I think that's what makes, again, we're at WORKBENCHcon. What makes this community unique is like the ability or the lack of fear going and trying to accomplish something you've never done before, and letting everything you do be a new thing versus just getting comfortable and staying in that comfort zone. So, well, cool. So back to organization. How does organization play a role in helping you, accomplish these projects and stay on schedule and on task?
Absolutely. So I'm very blessed to have my dream shop now. Before that, not too long ago, I was in a 2-car garage, and I used to get comments about, I can't believe how organized you are. And my response was, I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Like in this space, like I can't function if I'm not organized because I don't have room to be disorganized. And wall control was a huge, huge help for that. I really struggled, and then I was able to put in a fairly large wall control wall. I want to say it ended up being about 6 by 5 feet or so, and that freed up so much space. And the biggest thing is I have this concept of always trying to store your tools at the location they're used.
Yeah.
That was an error I made where I was trying to group like things, but then it turned like, all my power tools should be here, all blades should be there, all the stuff for whatever should be here, but nothing was where I used it.
Exactly.
So then I spent all the time walking around my shop, and setting up the wall control was one way that helped me store things where they're used instead of where they're like their neighbors, which was an organization shift, and then all the accessories you have help that. And then I had the one wall in a very small shop, now I have a big shop, and I've been able to scatter my wall control everywhere. So I've got my panel by my CNC, I've got my panel by my bandsaw, I've got more panels over by my miter saw station, which is general collection, but then I can take all the things I use at those machines and have them stored at the machine.
Awesome.
And just, all the shelves and bins and accessories you have make that
I
really easy without having to build a custom cabinet for every tool I have where I want to keep that stuff there.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you making that point about, and this is, the purpose of this podcast is to bring value to all, our listener and our customer. Like, I don't think a lot of people think you don't have to store like tools with like tools. Put them where you're going to use them. It's a completely different, it's such a subtle shift, but it makes a big difference in efficiency when you're going about your business and, whatever project you happen to be working on.
And we get inadvertently deceived into doing that because it looks beautiful, and it's really good for marketing. And so whenever you see stores and displays and end caps or go to trade shows, that's the way everything's arranged because it's very pleasing to the eye. But, that's marketing to sell it to you. That's not functional to use it. So, we make it look like that because it looks cool and it's just what we're used to seeing. But it's not the right approach for a workshop and workflow.
Exactly. I even, from our side as a manufacturer and distributor of our brand, I learned a lot from Amazon and how they do things. And I didn't realize, this is just like beside the point, but to that same point, when new products come in, they randomly put them wherever there's empty space. Nothing is organized. They know where it is because they have the technology to do that, but they figure they're going to be picking at random, so they might as well randomize where new materials flow in. So
what?
It's not in order. It's just empty spot, it goes there. Empty spot, it goes. So you're putting stuff in the shelf as quickly as possible, and by function of the randomness of it, you're not moving anymore to pick it. So it's crazy. But
So the organization is the unorganization.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like a crazy reversal of logic that makes it work even better. So
well, in a way it makes a lot of sense because your organization becomes the knowledge management. It's just the keeping track of, because if you think about it, it doesn't really matter if things are together. You still have to know exactly where it is. Mm-hmm. So if that exactly where it is beside the things like it, or scattered among completely unrelated things, when most orders are going to be a group of a bunch of unrelated things anyways.
Yeah, it's like the limiting factor becomes, it's the knowledge of it. And so it's like the limiting factor was not, you weren't able to do that. And now you can, anyways,
anyone who's been into a grocery store or a home improvement warehouse knows that while it seems natural to put things together, there's still those things where you're like, there's 5 places in this store that might be, because I don't know what you associated with and you laid it out. And I looked at all of them and there was in none of them. Yes. And I still just don't know where to look for this stupid thing.
Exactly. That's hilarious, man. So
I struggle with that at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Every time. Every time. I'm like, where's pumpkin? Is it with the other root vegetables or gourds, or is it with the pie things, or is it with the every grocery store puts canned pumpkin in a different place.
It's why is the glue with the paint and not in hardware with the fasteners? It's because it's by the tape, so they're both adhesives, and you mask So yeah, all the duct tape, and then because all the sticky things are there, then the glue went there too by the paint, even though you don't associate glue and paint at all. But sure, it makes sense. But then you could also go, right, it secures things, so it should be by all the screws and bolts, because that's how we hold things together is tape and glue, but it's not there.
Exactly.
Well, now you're making me feel bad because my tape and my glue and my paint are all in the same cabinet, but because that's where they are in the hardware store, so I associate them with those things being together. I never use glue and tape or glue and paint at the same time.
That's a pretty good organization hack. If you arrange your shop like the hardware store, and assuming they keep it relatively the same, then you'll know where to go in the hardware store.
But well, yeah, but unless you go to a different store.
That's true. We were talking about that yesterday. So yeah.
But I was listening to a different, don't fire me, organization podcast where the lady was saying that when you're going to put stuff away, you ask yourself 3 questions, and the first one was, if I was looking for this, where would I look for it? Mm-hmm. And that's where you put it.
I think that's great. I try to do that with like my inbox and like all my folders.
Yeah.
If I went to go find something somewhere else and I put it somewhere else, I'll change it to that thing I looked for the first time. Because that's like your knee-jerk reaction. So, man, we've really this might be the most organization conversation we've had.
Yeah, this is like a full episode on
this. Is exactly. Yeah, this is great stuff, Caleb. So, well, cool. Well, we don't want to take up too much of your time, man. Tell everybody where they can find you, and I know we've talked around it the whole episode, but how can they find you, and kind of what would your ideal customer look like, so that we can try to make that connection if we have anybody looking for work you're doing.
Yeah, so You Can Make This Too. That's my brand. You can find me at YouCanMakeThisToo.com or YCMT2.com, which is my logo and everything, but I have both. And then You Can Make This Too on pretty much any social media, most prevalent on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. As far as the ideal client, I guess I kind of have 2. So on my content side, it's pretty much anyone who wants to make things, and I do a lot of tip and technique and comparison stuff, as well as a whole lot of projects, just from a very the feedback I always get is whenever I want to really know how to do something and be encouraged to do it and get the step-by-step and all the details, like that's when I go to You Can Make This Too. Like when I want, like if I want to build a cabinet and I see you have a cabinet video, I know that's going to answer all my questions. I'm not sure it's going to be like, well, it was really cool watching him build a cabinet, but I still don't know how to build a cabinet. Yeah. But that was fun and I'm entertained, but I don't know how to build that.
Yeah.
Like I watch you because I know I'm going to be entertained, but I'm also going to know how to build my cabinet. And more than that, I'm going to know why I need to build mine differently. Like I don't know how you teach me that, but I know why I don't want to do it like you do.
Yeah.
Because you educated me in that process. So if you want to learn about how and why, I'm big on the why. That's what I deliver in my content. And then as far as custom furniture, I really like doing mixed media, do a lot of dining tables. So if you're looking for some really crazy dining tables, then just whatever is more interesting, I get more interested, and then I want to do it. So
awesome.
Concrete, steel, epoxy, Lego, whatever you can think of that you want to put in there. But I also super enjoy getting into the fine joinery and doing more Japanese and Nakashima kind of inspired stuff. So that's like what my dining table is. And yeah,
gotcha.
I don't know. I just like to make things.
Awesome. Yeah. Anybody listening would take that away for sure.
Ask me to make something I've never made before. If you ask me to make something I've already made, I'm going to be bored. But if you just ask me to make something I've never made, that's going to make me feel stupid because I'm going to mess it up and you got to have to, stay up late trying to figure out how to make this work. That's what
the sweet spot
me.
right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming on, Caleb. I hope you have a good rest of the WorkBenchcon, and this has been fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. Organization Conversation is brought to you by Wall Control, a family-owned and operated producer of best-in-class wall-mounted organizers for your home or business, made right here in the USA. To learn more, go to wallcontrol.com.